Okay, so Bitcoin is 6 things. Do you remember? Currency, mint, central bank, and now we're going to talk about as a wallet or bank account, also a payment network, and a record of all the transactions or the blockchain. Whenever you take possession of Bitcoin, they are permanently associated with what Satoshi calls a wallet. Now, these wallets share characteristics with a traditional bank account, like the fact that they have numbers associated with them, which you also do with a bank account, like a routing number, an account number. Now, the underlying technology or math or science that Satoshi used for this is based on public key cryptography. So this is why cryptocurrencies are called cryptocurrencies. It comes from cryptography, and cryptography just refers to concealing or hiding information that you're trying to send to someone so a third party doesn't see it or doesn't get to it. And cryptography has been used in wars, the imitation method, I think, with Benjamin Cumberbatch. He talked about like the cipher in World War I or World War II. But it's the idea of making numbers private or communication so others can't see. It's also what's used in our bank accounts. So when we're logging into our banks, or when we're trying to secure files in our email, it's also related to encryption. So that's just another part of cryptography. So that's why Bitcoin is called a cryptocurrency, and all these other currencies are called cryptocurrencies because it's based on cryptography. These Bitcoin wallets are obviously much different than the wallets you have than your physical wallet. So like the one that I have in my wallet and a purse that you might carry. These wallets are online and they're not in your back pocket, but they also act similarly than the ones that you have in your pocket and online, like your bank account. So these contain a balance of how many Bitcoin that you have, whether it's 0 or 0.126 Bitcoins. And they're also like a bank account in that they allow you to send Bitcoin online across the Bitcoin network privately and securely. And we'll talk about the Bitcoin network in a little bit. So just to review, okay, Satoshi used a computer and the internet to create software that includes a currency, mint, central bank, and a wallet and bank account, along with a payment network and a blockchain. You can get one of these wallets in one of several ways, and I'll just call them wallets moving forward, even though they share characteristics with a bank account. So the first place is via the original software. So I think I already mentioned Bitcoin QT. That was one of the original ones, but you also can get other newer versions of that software today and run it on your computer for free to get one of these wallets. Another way is via a mobile app. So like Electrum or Mycelium or Bread. Yes, Bread's the name of a good wallet. You could get one by getting a hardware wallet like a Ledger or Trezor. I have both of these. A lot of people are starting to get these. You could use a paper wallet. I've used those before. And there's a website that I use, but I'm not sharing it because I don't think it actually is safe anymore. But it is a way that you can use in general using a paper wallet. Not as popular anymore, as more in the beginning. Mostly hardware wallets are used today. The next place is via an exchange, a cryptocurrency exchange like Coinbase or Kraken is another one. I recommend and use Coinbase the most, but there's a lot of them out there. Now, the one thing I will say about exchanges is that they are the easiest and most convenient way to get a wallet and store your Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. But the problem with them is you won't have possession of your private key. Okay, I'll talk more about that in a future section called Not Your Keys, Not Your Coins. And what that means is if you don't have possession, whether you've printed out and you see the physical private key on paper, or you have it online, a hardware wallet somewhere digitally, if you don't have that, then you do not actually have possession of your cryptocurrency, of your Bitcoin. Not your keys, not your coin, okay? So an exchange will let you store Bitcoin, but they hold those private keys and they don't let you see them. Not because they're trying to be sneaky, at least I don't think so. They're trying to prevent you from sharing it with other people or making changes to your wallet. So it's a way to make it easier for you theoretically. But the downside is that, one, you don't actually have your keys. You don't actually have your Bitcoin. That's a big deal. So if anything were to happen to that exchange, like it becomes insolvent, they run out of money, or they run away with your money, they become criminals, or they already are criminals, or there's a hack and those are stolen, you lose your Bitcoin. It's gone. And this has happened many times. So this is definitely a risk. And you might say, well, then why does anyone ever do it? Well, it's one of the best things that we have. Okay, but it's similar to like your bank. If you think about it, your bank can be hacked. Okay, and so there's obviously a lot more regulation and laws and even security around banking. Actually, I wouldn't even say there's better security around banking. There's probably better security around cryptocurrency because it's even more secure. But there are trade-offs. There's trade-offs to using a Coinbase, an exchange, to using like a hardware wallet. A hardware wallet would probably be the most safe and secure place to store your Bitcoin, but it's a little bit tricky. That's why I have a walkthrough to help people use it, because it's not as easy as just a plug and play. It's not yet. It's getting there. Whereas an exchange is really easy to use, really easy to sign up, for the most part, pretty easy to use. I also have a walkthrough service that I help people do as well with that, charge for that. But it's not as secure as a hardware wallet. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about keys, okay? Now, these aren't the physical keys that you have to get into your house or your car, but they're kind of similar, all right? Keys give you access. When you get a Bitcoin wallet or cryptocurrency wallet, you get 3 numbers that come with it. And these numbers are very important. So this part might be a little technical, but it's necessary to understand what Bitcoin is and why it matters. The 3 numbers that you get are a private key, which we just talked about how important that is, private keys, a public key, and an address. And I'm going to break down what each of these are and kind of give you some analogies. These numbers share similarities with a bank checking account, specifically checks. And I have to give credit to Andreas Antonopoulos here, who gave me the idea to use a check analogy because he did in his book. So I just kind of copied what he did and did a little bit of addition to it. And here are the similarities between a check with a bank account and how it relates to those 3 numbers. The private key is most like the signature portion at the bottom right of a check, which confirms account ownership and it enables the release of funds. So that's the private key. The next number, the public key, is most like your account number with the bank. So it's something that's unique to you, but it's something that you could also share with others. The address is most like the person or the entity listed in the pay to the order of field, or it's where the money goes, or it's where the money comes from. And here's a brief description of what each of these numbers does behind the scenes and why they're so important. And this isn't work that you have to do. Remember, this whole Bitcoin thing is automated. All right, so in that respect, there's not a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, kind of like the internet. There's so much going on behind the scenes as you record things, as you stream things. You don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to explain, just touch on what's happening behind the scenes. So when you hear these things, you'll have an idea, because it is important and it's pretty cool because it's unlike anything that we've seen before, how they've been combined together. Private key. So this is the most important number that should never be shared with anyone, okay? By far the most important number out of those 3 numbers. What happens is the Bitcoin software automatically and randomly generates a private key for you. And this private key is used to send Bitcoin back and forth from your wallet to another person's wallet or another identity's wallet, company. And they do this by digitally signing the transaction before it's broadcast on the network. Okay, that's where the signature analogy comes in. The private key also generates public keys, which is where we're going to get our next number. And I just mentioned it, the private key is most like the signature portion at the bottom of a check, the bottom right-hand corner of a check, that confirms account ownership and enables the release of funds. And here's a real example of a private key. I'm using this just as an example, but it is a real private key. I don't have any money on this, but it is what a real private key looks like. Okay, next is the public key, okay? So we started with private key, now we're talking about the public key. This public key is used to receive Bitcoin in your wallet. It also generates an address, okay? So you're starting to see a pecking order, private key, public key, address. And this public key is most like your bank account number listed at the bottom of your checks. Here's a real example of a public key. And I'll just say these are one of the problems of Bitcoin right now, or even have always been, are these really long numbers. It has been so stressful at times sending and receiving money, Bitcoin, back and forth across exchanges, because if you're off on any and even one of these letters or numbers, you lose everything. I'm just going to be real with you. You do lose everything. It's scary. Now, there are ways and methods and even new updates to the system, Bitcoin, that makes this easier, and it continues to get better. It's way better than what it was 10 years ago, if you ask anyone. But it is, I would say, it's still a downside, is seeing these public and private keys and addresses, these really long numbers. We're not used to seeing or even dealing with these. Even phone numbers. Do you know the top 5 numbers that you call every day? Do you remember them? I don't. My phone does. God forbid I lose my phone and I lose all my contacts. I only know a couple numbers, and we're probably all in the same boat. So it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means it's a challenge that's being overcome, because it's not going to go away, these long numbers, just the way maybe we present them. Okay, next, address. This is what you give to someone or an entity where you want to send your Bitcoin to, and so you can see from where the Bitcoin was sent. This is most like the person or the entity listed in the pay to the order of field in the middle of a check, where it's going. And this is a real example of an address. Okay, I'm going to further try to make this a little bit easier by giving a picture. So breaking this out into pictures, and I'm going to use these graphics to represent each of these numbers to help visualize how each of these is used. And again, you don't have to perform this work. This isn't going to be required of you after this e-course to say, oh gosh, I have to create the private key I have. You don't have to do any of that. It does it automatically. I'm just telling you what happens. So you don't need a full, deep, thorough understanding of this. You just need to understand from a high level, well, what this is. So when you hear public key and private key or an address, what are those? You have an idea of what those are, and it's good to know that. So this is what happens under the hood of Bitcoin, so behind the scenes, just so you know.